So I've got a lot I want to cover today. And I have to read this comment because it's just so fantastic. Testing. Hey, everyone, this is the year, all caps, I get successful in art. Hands down, high five, best comment so far. Yes, we all need to work on, not just work on, but get successful in our art in 2020. And how we define success can be radically different from person to person. So it's okay if your definition of success is really different from mine. It doesn't matter. We're still going to be talking about things that apply to everybody that's on here today. So it doesn't matter whether you define success as making $30,000 in art and selling your paintings, or getting 4 grants and 2 residencies this year, or just selling your first painting, or just finding people who love your paintings. All of those things can be definitions of success. That's an extremely individual, personal thing, and it's something that you need to spend at least a little time reflecting on before you dive in trying to become successful. You got to know where you're going, or you're going to end up nowhere. So step 1 is to figure out where you want to go. Where do you want to be at the end of 2020? But we're going to be covering over the next 4 sessions today, and then 3 more, the different steps that you need to take in order to become successful as an artist in 2020. Because Lord knows it's way different now than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or 4 million years ago when I finished school. So I want to back up just a little bit. I talked about, I guess this is last week, I asked the question both in the free Facebook group and to my email list about selling art, and about what it would mean to them to sell art, or what was getting in the way of them selling their artwork. And I got great responses back. Lots and lots of people said they really want to sell their work. And this was in response to why you should start selling your paintings. Lots of people said they really wanted to be able to sell their artwork, but they had no clue how to get started. Raise your hand if that's one of y'all. Anybody on the chat roll, if that's you, raise your hand. And that was definitely me when I got started. When I was in school studying to become an artist, I have a BFA in drawing and painting. I had lots of fantastic courses on how to draw and how to paint. I learned how to draw and I learned how to paint. What I did not learn how to do, because they only had 1 course in it, and at that time it was still through the very traditional ways that artists had to become successful, I had no coursework in how to make a living as an artist. And when I graduated, it was like I looked around and go, okay, now what do I do next? Because the only system that was in place at that time, and granted this is the Jurassic age, but the only system that was in place at that time was the traditional gallery route. So you had 2 choices. You could get in a gallery, and the only good galleries supposedly were in New York, or you could go teach. Luckily, I love teaching, so I went on to graduate school and then started my teaching career, and was at the college level teaching painting at the university and college level for 25 years. That was fantastic, but I've always had that urge to sell my work, to market my work, or to have an engaged audience. And by that I mean people who you are able to create a relationship with. And on the side, I kept trying to figure it out. And it took me a little while to figure out how to get in the gallery. I did make that trip to New York, moved to New York, starved to death for a couple of years, and then came back south where I could get warm again. And at least the cost of living was a little bit lower. And I figured out how to get in galleries, but it was really hard. And I wasn't ever able at that point to make enough from gallery sales to be able to leave my full-time college teaching position. And that was one of my big dreams, was to be able to be a full-time artist. And I just could not figure out how to get there. It wasn't until the advent of the internet that I was able to do that. But back in reverse again, the only system that I was ever told that would work was being in a gallery. So I got in there and it still wasn't working. And that's where a lot of people get flummoxed, give up, and go and work in a bookstore or do something else, which is fine, but it's not what they love doing. So there's a big problem when you want to do something and you just don't know how to get started. Even if you've had a degree, the information just was not there on how to share your work with the world. So the solution to that a lot of people have, a lot of artists have, is that they try to sell locally and live. And by that I mean they try to sell, and I've talked about this a little bit during the past week, they try to sell at art fairs, at local galleries, and live events. That used to work, and lots of people made really decent livings by combining the three things together. Any of y'all ever do live art fairs? I've done a couple of those too, and they're a lot of fun, but they've changed dramatically over time. Here's the problem with that. Number one, the first problem is that attendance at live events, whether you're talking about live art events in particular, whether you're talking about galleries, museums, art fairs, commercial art galleries, all of those things, attendance is down. It's down, it dropped almost 7% between 2002 and 2012. I suspect it's dropped another 7% since 2012 to 2020. So we're talking about a 7% drop. Now I know that's reversed for some of y'all. Hopefully I'll flip it back over when we get the recording up. But in case you can't read it, in 2002, it was 39.4% of Americans attended live art events. In 2012, only 33.4% attended those events. So how does that affect those live art fairs and art gallery exhibitions? It means they don't have as many eyeballs coming through the door. And the thing about eyeballs coming through the door, that's how sales happen. If you don't have enough bodies in the room, enough potential clients, you can't make sales. And there's an average number that you've got to hit in order to make those sales. And it's just numbers. It's just a numbers game. And that number is 2%. Y'all can hear that again. The average conversion rate on anything, whether it's invitations to an event, whether it's sales, just the average. Now, some people will do better and some people will do worse, but the average number is 2%. That means 1 in 50 who walk through the door of a gallery will make a purchase. That means you have to have an awful lot of eyeballs in order to sell out a show. And those eyeballs are disappearing. There are not as many of them there. And when that happens, it becomes a whole lot harder to follow that traditional route. The other problem with that is that there is a lack of scarcity now. So it used to be, even 10 years ago, that when somebody went to a gallery opening or they went to an art fair, they would walk in and see that artist's work, and it would only be available during that particular time frame. So say the gallery exhibition was up for a month. That work was available for a month and then it went away. And in marketing, that's something we call scarcity. And it compels a purchase. It's one of the things that helps drive people to buy. FOMO, fear of missing out. At an art fair, the work is available for that weekend, and once it closes and the artist goes home, you can't purchase it. So again, there's a lot of drive to buy right then. That's the old art fairs. How's that changed? Well, now if you go to a gallery opening or you go to an art fair, you can scout out which artists' work you really like and then go look it up online. There's no drive to purchase that weekend or during that live time frame, because you can go back and find it on the web later. So one of the problems, one of the disruptors in the art market in the last 10 years has been the availability of art online. That's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a bad thing if you're one of those who's still marketing, still trying to use old school channels as your main way to reach an audience. This is why I absolutely do not recommend, if you're starting to sell your work, that be the very first channel you choose. Don't do it. It'll lead to frustration, because when people first start out, they don't have the marketing skills to bring in those numbers that will lead to a conversion, lead to a sale. They get frustrated, they give up, and they go back to work in the bookstore. Again, that's a great job, but it's not what people were looking to do for their career. So what it means is that the art world has been disrupted. The old system does not work the way it used to. But in that disruption is a lot of opportunity. So yeah, it means should not start out with that. Instead, you need to start by creating an online presence first, before going to those other live events. Once you've created an online presence and a demand for your work, then doing something live becomes a whole lot more viable, because you have the ability to bring the eyeballs in to drive the sales. So I have nothing against galleries at all. In fact, I work with galleries. I just don't think that's the place, and the numbers show it, that artists should begin in selling their work. That's a guaranteed path to frustration. So the solution then is to create an online presence. Create a website. And that appears at first to be the thing that's going to just solve all the world's problems. How many of y'all have a website who are online right now? Type yes into the chat roll if you've got a website. Yeah, I see lots and lots of people popping yes in there. Yeah. Now, how many of you are selling from your website? Say selling, or just type in selling, or nope. Yeah, I see a lot of nopes in there too. Yeah, that is not unusual. And again, that's the second mistake a lot of artists make. Remember, I told you I was going to talk about the mistakes artists make when they're trying to market their work online. The second one is creating a website and then expecting sales without doing anything else. And it doesn't mean that you haven't done all the right things. You've probably done all the right things that you need to do. But there are several other steps that need to happen, several other things that need to be in place before that website's really going to do the work for you. And one of the reasons that just creating a website doesn't work is that you're still not getting that traffic to the website. So this is I'm quoting one of the people who responded this past week when I asked this online. And she said, I've got a website, I've made a website, but I haven't had any sales. Maybe I should give up. Maybe this is not the career I'm meant to have. And that just broke my heart, because that is not at all the truth. Her work is really nice. I went and looked at it. It's very strong. It's not that she should give up. It's not that her work is not good enough. It's just that she doesn't have enough traffic coming through there. And she hasn't created that engaged audience yet to even know that her work is there. So if you've made a website and you haven't had any sales yet, it's not your fault. It's just that you have not had the traffic to come through that would give you enough eyeballs to create those sales. And it's not just any traffic that will do it. You need your perfect people to lay their eyeballs on it. You need your perfect niche. We're going to talk about the niche a whole lot more on Wednesday, and about finding your niche. Your niche is the very narrow slice of the art market that you work within, your narrow part of the art world. You know, a lot of people try to be everything to everybody, and they end up being nothing to no one. And that's not where I want you to be. You need to figure out what your little niche is and then dive in deep to find all of your perfect people. And this person just hasn't found her perfect people yet, but she definitely needs to not give up. The solution that a lot of people take to that is they get on Dr. Google. Y'all know what I'm talking about when I say Dr. Google, don't you? So they get in there and do a search on Google for how to sell their artwork. And how can they find somebody to help them sell their artwork? What they're doing right there is they're looking for a mentor. They're looking for somebody who's going ahead of them, whether they're looking for a course or just somebody who's an example that's gone ahead of them. But looking for a guru, somebody who's going to be a leader and show them the way to go beyond just having a website to having a website that converts to sales and an audience. Well, there's a lot of help out there, and some of it's not so helpful. I did a quick search right before we hopped on, and I typed in how to sell my paintings online. And guess how many results there were? Anybody want to make a wild guess how many results there were on Dr. Google? Yeah, there were a ton. Oh, there were more than thousands. Absolutely more than thousands, Leah. There were millions. There were 375 million potentials to that search. And probably, a good 90% of them are trash. But even if you look at the last 10%, most of the people who are teaching marketing for artists online are using a really outdated system. So you can go and take a course, but it's not necessarily going to teach you what you need to know, because a lot of the people who are teaching art marketing are teaching it from a really singular focus. There's one I know who is teaching painters to market artists, visual artists to market their work. She's not a visual artist, and she hasn't made any money as a visual artist. She's in theater. That's wonderful, but she doesn't have a really strong track record of producing successful artists. Another that I know of, wonderful person, but the course begins with how to write an artist statement. And I'm going to say something radical here right now. You don't have to have an artist statement and a bio to sell your work online. You really don't. And I know so many people who spend a gazillion hours straining over that darn artist statement. It will not sell your work for you. It's not the right place to spend your time. And the reason that doesn't work, and the reason why lots of these people's programs don't work, is that they're still working within that paradigm, that old paradigm of the only way that you can make a living as an artist is either to get in a gallery or to teach. So they're still teaching those two tracks when there's so many other ways that work better. And if you get stuck in that old traditional, got to find a gallery route, it means that you spend hours and weeks straining over your artist statement and your bio. And you put your bio and your artist statement up on your website, and you create a portfolio on your website and a contact page and get it all up there, and then you wait for the galleries to appear. That, again, is not how it works. Crickets end up happening instead of people knocking on your door. People don't come knocking on your door until you've raised a ruckus. And you're not going to raise a ruckus by just passively putting stuff up and waiting for people to come. So you've got to get that traffic coming in first. So there are way more things that are important than doing that artist bio and that artist statement. Do they matter? Absolutely they do. But they are way down here on the to-do list by comparison to a whole pile of other things that need to get done first. First main thing is to make good work. Find your niche. Know your audience. It's way more important than that very academic artist statement. So don't go down that route and get trapped that way. Repeat after me. I will not strain over my artist statement, because that's not the most important thing. It's not even the first thing that should go on your website. It is not the most important thing. And the parallel discussion on that one that I hear all the time, and it's one of the biggest questions I get, is, should I write my artist statement in first person or third person? I've heard that the bio needs to be third and the artist statement needs to be first. This is not a critical issue. And in actuality, on your website, both should be in first, because you're talking directly to an audience. You're having a conversation with them. And when you use third person, what does that do to your audience? It puts a big brick wall between you and them. That is not what you want to do. If you want to create an audience, you want to build relationships, and you want to be successful as an artist. So tear down those walls. Don't create new ones between you and your potential audience. That is a big no-no. So don't worry about the artist statement right now. Don't worry about your bio. Don't worry about how long or short your resume is. There are a lot of things you can do to build your artist resume. That does not matter that much online. And here's why those things don't matter. An online presence, an online platform, gives you direct access to your perfect people. It means you can find your perfect people and you can talk directly to them. Those other things I just mentioned, those are tools that people use when they don't have that direct access. You get to talk to your audience in DMs, direct messages on Instagram, in comments on Facebook, in questions that come through Instagram. That's why your artist statement's not that important yet. You can answer those questions in other ways that are way more important in building relationships. So I have just stood on my soapbox, but I'm only just beginning. It is something I feel really strongly about. I don't like to see people waste time, and I don't like people to waste effort and get frustrated and give up. The biggest problem with that wasted time and effort is it leads to people giving up before they're at the point where they should give up. Everybody knows that at some point, there's some people who are just not going to make it. It's not you, because you're here. But there's some people who just are not cut out for being an entrepreneur, which is what an artist is, who has their own business. When you are working directly with your own audience, when you're working with a gallery, you're still an entrepreneur. Some people just aren't cut out for that. Then they can move on, but they shouldn't be cut from that process simply because there's so many roadblocks in the way, or they think they're not good enough. Anybody ever thought they weren't quite good enough to sell their work? I'm willing to bet at least a half dozen people on the call today have at one time or another thought their work wasn't good enough yet to get started. You should start before you're ready. There's an audience out there for your work as it is right now, and we just need to figure out how to get you in front of them. So the solution to that, the solution to avoiding that reverting back to the old system, is to use a new system. Is to use a roadmap that includes the 5 keys to thriving as an artist. And those 5 keys start out with something I think is crucial. It's fundamental. And you've got to have a holistic approach or it won't work. That first key is a thriving mindset. The first key is the belief in yourself. The first key is to realize you are good enough right now. And the way to get over this fear that we have of not being good enough is to show up, and to show up on a regular basis. So for everybody who feels like they're not good enough, not good enough to post, not good enough to share their work. You are good enough. And here's what I want you to think about every time the voice tells you you're not good enough. There's an audience out there that needs you. This is one of the reasons why I said everybody needs to think about selling their work. There's an audience, at least sharing their work. There's an audience out there that needs to see what you have to share. And I mean you, not me and not Fred or Susie over here, but you. You have something special to share with the world. And who are you to hold that back? As artists, as humans, but particularly as artists, we have a responsibility, and I mean that very, very deeply. You have a responsibility to share your work with the world. You won't necessarily know what the impact is. You may not hear about it, and you may not hear about it right away. You may never hear about it. But I'm promising you, your work has an impact on the world. And I know I've shared this story before, but I have a friend who's an artist who sold a painting kind of under duress. The guy that bought it just kept pestering her until she sold it to him. It was not one that originally was for sale. And she got a letter from a note from his wife. I think it was almost a year later. And in it, she said, I just wanted to let you know how much your painting meant to my husband. He passed away, and I can't remember how long it was, but maybe just a few weeks before then. And that painting meant the world to him because it reminded him of his late niece. That story is still with me, and I heard it almost a year ago. You won't know the impact your work has on the world. You know, we think about art and having grandiose visions for what the purpose of art is. And when I was teaching, my students in their senior year would have to come up with I did make them write artist statements because we were in academia, but they had to write an artist statement. They had to talk about what their big why was. And so many of them wanted to go out and save the world. They wanted to end hunger, feed the homeless, shelter the needy. And I had to have that conversation with them about that being an awfully large burden to put on one small painting. So think instead about what Mother Teresa said, that if we all just cleaned our own front doorstep, the world would be a whole lot better place. If you change one person's life with your work, you've had an impact. And if you don't put the work out there that is meant to change that one person's life, you are shirking your responsibilities. So I want you to think about that every time you tell yourself, I'm not good enough. Remind yourself there is somebody out there that needs to see that artwork. You don't know what the impact is going to be. Yeah, Virginia says, last year a friend's daughter saw one of my paintings and told me that it really spoke to her. I gave it to her. She couldn't afford it, and I felt she needed to have it. It made us both feel good. That's awesome. I think that's really an important kind of act to do. Doesn't mean I want y'all to go out and give away all your paintings. I really don't. But when you feel moved to, I think that's an important and very generous way to create a relationship. You've got a fan for life right there. So don't hold your work back from a world that needs more of it. That mindset of a thriving artist should be the foundation of your whole painting practice. Whether you want to make $30,000 or $3 off of your art. That mindset of a thriving artist is super important. Second key is wonderful artwork. And know that your artwork will never be there. You know, the there that is the final stage when your artwork is perfect. Perfect doesn't happen. All of us become critical of our work at one time or another. But you need to have a consistent body of work. You need to have artwork. Third key, and it comes after those first two things. Those two have to come first. Third can come almost simultaneously is the online platform. because having an online platform can lead to doors to all kinds of other things. It will facilitate whatever success path you have in mind. But it's not enough just to have the platform. You've got to use it to build an audience, and not just any audience, because it needs to be your perfect people. You need to use it to create an audience that you can build a relationship with, who will fall in love with your work. They may not love it when they first get started, but you can cultivate that relationship to the point where they fall in love with it. And it makes selling so much easier, because then you're not pushing your work towards them, you're pulling them towards your work. It's a whole different kind of relationship. And the last final thing is you need a sales mechanism. And by sales, I'm using that really loosely. Sales, I mean a way to transfer the artwork to the audience. You need to have a mechanism for influencing them, whether that's influencing them for a sale or influencing galleries to show your work later, or influencing them for any final purpose. So those 5 things again are mindset, artwork, online platform, engaged audience, and sales mechanism. We're going to be diving deep into that in our session on Wednesday. But I hope that all of you are going to let go of any hesitations you have about sharing your work with the world. And that you're going to see that even if you have tried to sell your work locally and live and it didn't work, or if you have a website and it's just not selling work yet, or if you've learned art marketing somewhere else and they were still pushing the old gallery system first, you understand that there's a better way. And we're going to be diving into what that roadmap looks like in more detail on Wednesday. So make sure you're back here on Wednesday. And remember that if you can't be here live, there will be a recording page. We have a directory page set up, a concierge page, that's going to hold all of the videos from the workshop. There are going to be a couple little bonus videos in there too, but video 1, 2, 3, and 4 will all be on that page with any resources that I mentioned along the way. So you can go back as we go forward. You can go back as we go forward through the workshop and binge on all of those as much as you want over the course of the next 11 days while that's still live. But I also want to make sure that I leave enough time here to answer questions. So I'm going to go back through here and check on those questions. Oh, and the page is going to come to y'all in an email. So once we get off and we get the recording uploaded to the page, we're going to send an email out. It'll probably be a couple of hours before we can do that, because it's just a little downloading and uploading that has to happen. But y'all will all get the link to that. So no worries about that. So let me scroll back up here to the top and make sure I'm covering all of the questions that we've got here. And awesome. I love seeing how widespread we've got here. Carson, it is on my Facebook page. It doesn't share automatically into AWL anymore, primarily because Facebook is Facebook. So look on my page and see if there's anything there. You can always share that into AWL. So I am still so excited about the people who said this is going to be the year they get successful in art. That is fantastic. Let me scroll. I don't want to miss anything. Sandra says, my definition of success is showing up at the easel. That is fundamental. That is the absolute basis from which everything else comes, Sandra. So kudos. If you make no other promises to yourself in 2020, make that one, and a lot of the other stuff will fall into place. It can't be the only thing you do, but it is definitely one of the most important. And let's see. Caroline says, yes, I make so little at my day job, less than $12,000 a year. If I could replace that living with selling art, it would improve my life so dramatically. Put that somewhere on, I love Post-it notes. So my students all know that I'm addicted to them. I have them in like 14 colors right here. And y'all can't see it, but my outline for our workshop is at the bottom of my computer in multicolor Post-it notes. Put it on a Post-it note and stick it on your computer or on the wall in your studio, Caroline, that's your goal for this year. And hold yourself to it, because that's doable. It just means that you need to really push yourself to build your audience. But that is a fantastic goal for 2020. And I want y'all to think about what kind of difference it would make to you if you could replace your income at your day job with an income from your art. What it meant to me when I was able to do that was that I was able to leave academia. And I love teaching, but I'd been doing it a long time at that point, and I wanted more time to paint. So what it meant to me was that I was going to have the freedom to be in the studio a whole lot more, and to be able to schedule my day the way that I want to, so that I have enough flexibility to be there when my daughter needs me to babysit her daughter, or when I had an aging parent that needed help. I remember maybe 2 years before my last year at the college, a few years behind that, my dad had an emergency gallbladder operation. It was inflamed and he had to go in that day. The doctor said, I'm checking you in and we're going to do surgery this afternoon. I was at work teaching in my class. My mother was bedridden. She could not be left home alone while my dad was in the hospital. And my boss at the time, who wasn't my boss much longer after that, she went on to another career, gave me a hard time about leaving to go be with my mother so that my dad could go to the hospital. And that really cemented my desire to leave that position. She did me a big favor. It lit a fire in my belly that just did not go out. The idea that you should not be there to take care of family that need you, that's not a valid reason to take off from work. I'm not buying that. So it can make a big, big difference. I want you to think for yourself what kind of a transformation it would make in your lives. And you can share that into the Facebook group. I'm going to ask that question in there later. What kind of a difference would it make to you? And make it real and make it concrete. Like that ability to be there when somebody in your family is sick makes a huge, big difference. Being able to replace your income at a job that you don't love with one that you do love. How would that make a difference in your life? So awesome. Love seeing all those responses there. I see a handful of people who are selling. Awesome sauce. I love that. So Gwen says more of an inventory. There's nothing wrong with that. You're just building that inventory so that you then can move it. We're going to figure out how you're going to move it, Gwen. And moving from occasional sales to more often sales. That's definitely what we need to do. Jean says, no, don't know how to set a website up. We're going to talk about that some on Wednesday. So make sure you're here for that on Wednesday, because if I don't have time to do it Wednesday, I'm going to do it during one of the additional sessions, but I'm going to show y'all just how fast you can set a website up. Doesn't have to take you long at all. As Ginger says, she just started a website and she's going to be working on learning how to sell from it. Marianne says she sells on Facebook. Absolutely. And I've sold through Instagram. Now you can sell directly from Facebook and Instagram now. You can use direct messages to do it, but I've done both. And those are huge, huge helps. You just still need to have a website, even if that's the main channel you're selling it through. So we're going to talk, Sandra's asking about the simplest way to build a website. We're going to be talking about that on Wednesday. So be sure to be back for that, and we'll walk through a lot of it. Pat says, are universities teaching art marketing? They are now, because there are enough of us who created a big stink that the system changed a good deal. The federal government created a stink too, because they said that if you are charging students, I'm paraphrasing what came out, what it was that you cannot charge students for an education from which they have no hope of making an income. That's kind of a paraphrase of what they said. And there's a lot of truth to that. If you're going to teach students how to paint, you also need to teach them what to do with all the paintings they make. And back in 2000, I think it was when I first started developing the arts entrepreneurship course that I taught at the college before I left. So I taught it almost 10 years. And even back in the 90s, we had a course on arts marketing, or a marketing for artists. We had an arts entrepreneurship course that I worked with. So yes, they can learn it now. It's just, it was not there for a very, very long time. And it certainly wasn't there when I was in school. One of my major professors taught a course on how to get into a gallery. I just was not ever able to get into the course because it filled so fast. So, but yes, they do teach that now. And I taught that for almost 10 years. It is, I think, a necessary part of any art curriculum, whether you're in music, painting, theater, dance, whatever. You need to have those fundamentals of how to turn your love into something that is a viable practice. So absolutely. Even the internet's changing fast, so you have to see when your resource was made. That is such a good point. I'm going to have to steal that and add it to the presentation. Yes, you need to be really careful when you look up on Dr. Google for an answer on how to sell your art, to make sure that whatever that resource is current, because what worked in 2008 does not work necessarily now. So I'll give you an example. Back in 2006, Dwayne Kaiser started selling a painting a day, making a small painting daily. I did that too, following after him, because he was so daggone smart. But I did it a little differently than he did. What he did was he put those paintings up for auction on eBay. So he would auction the painting off every day. And because he had the internet and an email list and a global market, there was a lot of competition for grabbing his paintings. There still is. He's still doing it. He's not painting every day, but he's painting almost every day. And he's still using eBay as the way to market it. The problem is that while eBay worked really fantastically 2006 to 2010, pretty much after that, it got saturated with a whole bunch of people trying to copy Dwayne Kaiser. And they would put paintings up there and start the auction price at $25, $50. And when you do that, it drives the price down. So there's a glut, there's a big supply and oversupply, and the price goes down. His prices have stayed high, but it's really hard to break into that. I would not use eBay as my sales mechanism now because of that. But there are other ways to do it. So there are parts of his business model that still work for other people, but selling them at auction on eBay is probably not one of them. So that is a really good point. You've got to watch what date that was written in. So, oh, thank you, Kate. She says, you're an ocean of common sense. Awesome sauce. Yeah, Marianne, someone told me you have to be super cheap to sell on eBay. Yeah, but not in general. And I want you to tell them, if they say that to you again, say, thank you, I'm not cheap. We all have a choice whether to be, we get to choose whether we're going to be Walmart or Kmart, or we're going to be Bonwit Teller. And remember that there's a whole range in between. And when you're first getting started, probably not a good idea to position yourself as Bonwit Teller. But it's also equally probably not a good idea to position yourself as Kmart, So I want y'all to go somewhere in between, not Bonwit Teller and not Kmart. Great institutions, but not good business models for artists to start out with. If you're too cheap, guess what people think? You're cheap and not any good. So there's a certain amount of assumption about the value of your work by the price you charge for it. Now, what that means is you need to look at the overall market that you're in and then price accordingly. So you don't want to be the cheapest person out there, and you don't want to be the most expensive person out there. So pricing can be a real art. It's one reason I have a whole module on it, because it's that complex. So do not be the cheapest person in the room, and don't be the most expensive one either. Lorraine says no. Then the scammers appear. The scammers can appear. And if you ever get an email in very broken English telling you that their wife has just they've caught their wife looking at your work on their website, and they want to buy your paintings, and they're going to ship them to this PO box because they're getting ready to move, just delete the email, because that's a scam that's been around forever. So while there's some scammers out there, they're usually pretty obvious. And if you use a very reputable payment gateway like PayPal, you have a lot of protection from those scammers. So don't let that stop you. Don't let that be a fear that holds you back. Caroline says, how do you connect to your niche audience? We're going to be talking about that in depth on Wednesday. So short answer is you develop that social media hub. You develop that platform, online platform. And the online platform is your website, your email list, and your social media hub. And you use those to engage with that audience. And that's how you find your perfect people, AKA your niche. So I am going to pick one person to help identify their niche on Thursday. So if you're interested in me helping you pick out or identify what your niche is, let me know in the Artwork Living Facebook group, and I will make sure that get your name in the hopper for that, because we're going to spend some time on Thursday, i.e. not one of the regular sessions, because we've got too much to cover in those. That's one of those little bonus extra sessions I was talking about. Just either drop me an email or pop it into the Artwork Living Free Facebook group, and we'll put you on the list. Pat says, my niece was just talking about her artist statement over the holidays. If she's in school, there's a reason why they're getting her to do that. And I required my students to do that as well. It's part of the academic education. But it's also part of, academia tries to give students, let me back up, a flavor, a feeling for what it's like to go through the professional practice of being an artist. And if you're exhibiting in a gallery, then you need the artist statement. And most schools now require students to have a senior exhibition. It's one of those things that they do now that they didn't do when I was in school. And it's really a good introduction to professional practices. So she needs to learn how to do it, but she doesn't need it on her website yet. Do you see what I'm saying there? That if she is working on a BFA, if she's in school learning how to be a professional artist down the road, be an exhibiting artist, then she's going to need it. But she does not need it on her website when she's first getting started. Awesome. So I think I answered Ginger's question about the niche. And Sandy says, is this session being recorded, and when we have access to the recording? Absolutely. Yes. And Betty, start before you're ready is one of my favorite sayings, because it's really true. Now, those of you who know me well know that I'm an avid equestrian. I haven't ridden as much in the last year because I lost my riding buddy, my horsey, last year, and I haven't bought another one yet. But so I use an awful lot of riding metaphors. Sorry about that if you hate horses, but there's a lot of truth in there. So when I was learning to ride bareback, I literally was sitting on the fence, and my horse was parallel to the fence, waiting for me to throw a leg over to get on the horse. And it had been decades since I had ridden bareback. I rode bareback as a kid, but what you'll do as a kid is way different from what you'll do as an adult, especially as an adult who's not 20 anymore. So sitting on the fence, working up the nerve to just throw a leg off and get off the fence. My horse got a little impatient, and so he moves a little further away from the fence because he shifts his weight to his other leg. And I realized I've got to make a move. Even if I fall, the worst that's going to happen is I'll land in the deep sand of the arena, and I get up and I try it again. Guess what happened when I did it the first time? I fell off. I threw my leg over with such force that I went all the way over and into the dirt. And nobody laughed at me. Nobody even noticed. They were all too busy with their other stuff. I got back up on the fence, and I did it with a little less force this time because I had a better idea of how much energy it would take. And then I did it again and again and again. So it's that fear of failure that stops us and keeps us sitting on the fence. But if you don't make a move, you're going to be on the fence forever. And if the worst that happens is that you end up in the dirt and you have to dust the dirt off of your britches, the world has not ended. So you have to get started and just make a move, because you learn through action, not from sitting on the fence, for sure. Yeah, I already read that one. Kristen says, my son is recovering from addiction and art is bursting from him. It runs in the family. That is fantastic to hear, because art definitely can heal. And I wish you and your son all the best with that, and that he finds a really good channel for that, because that's just fantastic. I love that you're encouraging him too. That is wonderful. Francis says, what if you know you're good enough, but it's just connecting the dots between the seller and the buyer? Then you can tick off that thriving art mindset right now, Francis. You already are there. And that means that you're ready to begin the next step after the artwork of really working on that online platform. So that's an awesome spot to be in. That you just need to have the online platform so that you can connect with your perfect people. Oh, Virginia, that is so sweet. Carol says, I mailed a large print of draft horses to the owner of the horses. About a year later, I heard from his wife that it meant so much to him. He had died a few months after receiving the print. Yeah. And doesn't that make you feel, that is fulfillment. That is the feeling of having an impact. And that is what really matters. Dollars are fantastic, and we need money to eat. We need money to pay rent. We need money to pay the power bill, all of those things that are super important. And don't ever let anybody tell you that there's something wrong with wanting to make the money from your paintings. You have to live. But the impact that you can make is equally important, and in the end, more important. I love that story, Carol. Kristen, if you can't do Wednesday, don't worry about it. It will be recorded. And I'm getting so behind on these. Yes, it is really important to keep making the work. It's not that you make the work and you build a platform and then you quit making the work, but you go create the audience. You need to have it all going at the same time. And that's why I don't have the iPad pulled up right now, but that's why when I'm going to show you all my nasty, messy notebook. That's why when I create a picture of those 5 steps, let's see if I can zoom in. Do y'all see how that's a circle and the mindset's at the middle? That's why it's a circle. Because at different times you'll need to work with different parts of that wheel. It's a circle and a wheel. It's not a linear process. Annie says, thanks for the recordings. Can't be here Wednesday, taking a plein air class. Ooh, fantastic. You know how I love plein air. Sandra says, what platform do you recommend for building a website? We are going to go over that in depth on Wednesday. And Elaine will go over that sales mechanism piece then too. We're going to go through all 5 parts of the roadmap on Wednesday. We're going to dive deep into that. That's all we're covering on Wednesday is the roadmap. And, oh, Kristen, thank you so much. Says, my painting's already better because of your teaching. And Susan, the last point, number 5, was a sales mechanism. I'm going to have a PDF of that for y'all for class on Wednesday so that you can keep up with that. So I'll have that download ready for y'all then. And yeah, Patsy says, I find my website's used like a catalog. People go to browse it, but I usually sell directly after that. I don't think that's unusual. And that's certainly one way you can use the website, but there are ways to make the website work for you even more than that. Awesome. Thank you, Carson. Lori says, is there an easy website application? Yes, there is one that you can do yourself, and there's one that's made just for artists. Then we're going to go over it on Wednesday. And, oh, thank you, Betty. I'm so glad you shared that. Yeah, absolutely. If y'all think this was helpful, feel free to share the link to register with any of your friends. The more, the merrier. And yes, you need a website in addition to Facebook and Instagram. And I'm going to talk about this a lot more on Wednesday, but I want to say it right now because I want to emphasize it so much. Really important. Great question, Leah. And the reason you need a website in addition to social media is, do y'all remember that social media platform that disappeared called MySpace? Remember that one? There were a lot of people who built their entire online presence on MySpace. And guess what happened when MySpace disappeared? They lost their platform. You don't own Instagram, you don't own Facebook, you don't own Pinterest, YouTube, or LinkedIn. Somebody else does. That's rented space. You own your email list and you own your website. You need those assets so that if anything happens to those social media platforms, you can still stay in touch with your audience. So you want to move the audience from social media to your own stuff that you own. And social media is wonderful. You can sell straight off of there. You can interact with people straight on there, but you need to move them to your website. So yeah, it's crucial that you have that. It's just part of that triumvirate. Susan says, what is a WL? I'm not sure what you mean by that. And it may be that my handwriting looked funky on that Post-it note, Susan, but I'm not sure. Chris says, is there a Facebook business page I should create? Yes, there is. And yes, you should. And then you can absolutely use that to drive organic traffic and paid traffic. And Larry, you absolutely gave it away. I highly recommend FASO. So FASO is the online platform that I recommend for artists because it's the easiest one for artists to use. It's designed exactly for artists. And I am not an affiliate for them. I keep telling them they need to start an affiliate program, but yeah, that's where I send people to. And awesome, Denise. She says, my 2020 goal is to sell more for more. That's a fantastic goal. Annie says, will you be addressing how to connect Facebook, Instagram, and website? I write a blog. Can you talk about how effective that can be? I will. That is part of the roadmap. Now, I'm not going to tell you literally step by step how to connect those during the training because we just don't have time enough to go through all of those intricate steps. We do cover that in the course, but we can't go through all of those steps right now. It's extraordinarily effective to do that. When you show up on a regular basis, you'll see your audience explode. So writing on the blog is fantastic. It's definitely a good thing to do, but you need to drive the traffic to it so they see it as well. Just writing on it's not enough. You've got to share it around as well. Yes, getting past techno fears. We're going to talk about that on Wednesday too, but there are tools out there that will make it easier for you to get on there, whether you're technologically challenged or you're a tech guru, because whichever, there's no reason for you to be spending hours and hours on tech. You need to be painting and you need to be connecting to your audience. You don't need to be the tech geek. And I have seen a bunch of people who I know, and some of you are on here on this call and can speak to this, that are technophobes, don't like technology very much, and have recently created their own websites using FASO, for instance. So it's definitely something you can get past. And Clover says, I do sell my work at our coffee house, but I'm very timid about the self-promotion piece. I have a blog and an undeveloped Facebook page. I totally get that. I was too when I first got started. I told y'all that I got started online by watching what Dwayne Kaiser was doing, and Julian Marrowsmith, who was also another daily painter. And when I first started launching a daily painting project online, I was terrified because it felt like I was intruding into other people's lives. I was sure nobody really wanted to watch what I was doing. And I was extraordinarily self-conscious, kind of like I was when I was sitting on the fence waiting to get on the horse to ride bareback. I was sure everybody was watching me. And the truth is, at the very beginning, when you're posting like that, most of the people who are watching you are your family and friends, and they're cheering you on. If they're not cheering you, block them or don't let them follow you, because you don't need that in your life. You can love on them, but you don't need to ask them for what their response is to what you're doing. So at first, it can feel really, really intimidating. But the truth is, the more you do it, the more times you show up, the easier it gets and the less self-conscious you are. So I feel you. I was there too. But the more you do it, the easier it gets. I promise. Yeah, Emily says, to be successful, does your website have to show, for example, floral, still life, landscape, figures, etc.? Can you specialize in a particular area? You do need to focus. That's part of niching down. And you can't spin all the plates at one time. You can do a whole lot of different things. But what you want to do is get one plate spinning first so that it's kind of got enough energy to keep going. Then you start the next plate until it has enough energy to keep going, and then the next plate. So don't try to do everything at once, because you'll do nothing well. Do one thing well, then move to the next thing, then move to the next. I preach, because I do preach about it when I'm talking to my students, that you need a three-legged stool as an artist to be comfortable and secure. You need your income to come from at least 3 different channels. You can't develop all 3 at once. So if you're paying attention today, you know the first one that I'm telling you to develop is your online presence, and start by selling online. That's your first channel. Your second channel could be a gallery. It could be art fairs. Not your first, but it could be your second. Your third channel could be teaching, because contrary to what people will tell you, that teaching is what people do who can't paint, that's not true. And there is nothing wrong with sharing with other people how to develop a love of painting. Even if they don't want to become a full-time painter, learning how to paint will open up a whole world to them. So think about that as an avenue down the road as well. There are a whole lot of other channels you can develop in addition, like licensing your work to publishing houses. And I have a contract that I've had for probably 6 years now with one. It's not a huge income stream, but it's a steady income stream. And if I paid more attention to it, it would be an even larger income stream. And again, it was not the first one. They found me because of my online presence. So have 3 income streams, and then you have a secure foundation. So I think that's really, really important. Claire says, I quit my co-op gallery. Time to have time in the studio and try other sales methods. I don't think there's anything wrong with a co-op gallery. It's just not the first one, and it can definitely eat up your time. So get your online presence going, and then think about going back to the co-op gallery. Marianne says, can you answer Lori's question? I think I probably did. Carson, can you look back through the chat roll and see if you see Lori's question, if I skipped it, and let me know. Type into the chat roll and I'll find it, because I think it's about 200 comments back and I won't find it before the end of the day. Let's see, I just moved it forward and I did not mean to do that. And sorry, y'all, I'm scrolling and trying to make sure I don't skip anything, which I do occasionally do. Kathy says, how serendipitous that after viewing your last webinar, I sold 2 paintings. That is awesome. I love hearing that. She says, I did just one thing you recommended. I finally sent out a very brief newsletter to my mailing list. That is music to my ears. Kudos, Kathy. I love hearing about that. So Kathy sold 2 paintings just by sending an email to a list that hadn't heard from her in a while. So think about what would happen if you just did one of the things that we're going to talk about during the workshop. And Leah absolutely says you can buy ads through Facebook and Instagram, and Facebook lets you target people by age. I bought some for a book I collabed with my business partner. Yeah, I love Facebook and Instagram ads. They are an awesome addition. I have used them since they first came out, and I think it was at least 10 years ago. So I can look back at the first awful ads that I ran. Ads work, but you need to know what you're doing with your ads. So don't just boost a post, but ads are fantastic. Clover says, I don't know how to build my audience, and somehow self-promoting seems egotistical and somehow ungodly, maybe. I'm going to ask you to think about 2 things there, Clover. First, you have to have an audience in order to share your work. If you don't have an audience, nobody else is going to see your work. And even if you don't want to sell it, there are people out there who could be impacted by your work in a positive way. You could change their world, but their world won't be changed if you don't share it. You owe it to the world to make a difference. And if you've been given the gift of art, being able to make art, then you've also been given the responsibility to share it. Even if you don't want to make any money from it, you don't have to. But you do have a responsibility to share it and figure out how to share it. That's not godly. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's one of the most godly things you can do, to share and to live into our responsibilities as human citizens. Now, making money from it and self-promotion. Now, if you stand on the street corner with a sign that says, buy my art, that's pretty sleazy. And there are definitely people that have sleazy selling practices around their paintings. But you don't have to do that. And if you use the right system, you shouldn't be doing that, because there are ways that work a whole lot better. Nobody likes being hit over the head with a really sleazy sales message. Instead, if you build a relationship with people, so you're not promoting, you're building a relationship and you're having a conversation with people that you begin to really care about, that's not something that hurts that audience at all. You're actually serving them. Service, all y'all get that I'm talking about impact as being service. I firmly believe we owe the world our service. And if you've been given the gift of being creative and being able to make art, then you have a responsibility to serve. And you don't want to walk away from that. So I don't agree with that. I think it's actually something that is important to do rather than being egotistical. So I want you to rethink that from the other standpoint. Patsy says, last year I had a lot of revenue from alternate use of my art. City banners and other applications, cards were substantial. That is an awesome channel. And there are a whole lot of ways to make income from your art other than just selling your paintings. And I love that you make mention of that. So yeah, absolutely. There are lots and lots and lots of ways to make a living from your art other than even selling paintings directly. So there's lots of potential out there. And yes, Tina, High five. Tina says, paint for the joy of painting rather than creating the perfect painting. So the flip side to my saying that there is an audience out there for every person's art, the flip side to that is the dark side. That's the people who paint just for the money and for the market. And why do I call that the dark side? Because if you're painting for what your perception of the market is, it means you're not going towards that art that could be making the impact. Because painting for the market will not make an impact. It also won't sell. So be sure not just to try to paint for the market. Also, don't try to make a perfect painting. That'll never happen. All paintings have flaws in them. It's what makes them human. And paint from your heart, because it's the emotion of the painting that people connect with. Really good point. And next comment, retirement is fast approaching. I'm getting an art studio built this year, so I'll be able to finally gather all my artwork and see what the heck I've been doing. That's fantastic. I'll be able to figure out the directions I truly want to go in. That is exciting. I've been asked if I'm going to teach in a local community center. Would you recommend that as well? Yes, I would. If you have the least little bit of a desire to teach wherever, then I would recommend you do that. Partially because, besides the impact part of it, that you'll be able to grow as an artist so much more when you're forced to think about how to share what information you have with other people. It will make you a better painter. So yeah, I think teaching is a fantastic thing to do. And I would definitely recommend that. Claire says, I also would like more on integrating teaching into a successful art career. Again, in order to teach, you want to get that online presence first. And that is crucial before you start teaching. You'll get teaching opportunities from that. So I would get that spinning first and then get the teaching part spinning. Oh, you're welcome, Amy. She said, I just started sending a newsletter 2 months ago to my contacted client list. I also changed where my website's hosted and have already seen some improvement in activity online. That's awesome. I'm curious to hear more about the sales mechanism talk. More coming on that on Wednesday. It's one of the things I love to talk about because it's not the sleazy part. So the sales mechanism doesn't have to be that kind of snake oil salesman kind of stuff. Remember that you are solving a problem and you're looking to serve. And when you remember that you are looking to serve by solving a problem, it becomes so much easier to do it and to have that conversation. When you built a relationship with people, that sales process is easier as well. Patsy says, I want to organize an art crawl to draw eyes to my work and people to my studio. Looking for suggestions for a small studio and flow outside may work. I think art crawls, again, that's a live event, so I want you to also get that online presence going first, or at least at the same time. We used to do an open studio in the building where I had my studio, and it was a real driver for live sales for a long time. It can be really helpful. And Anne, are you still on? Anne, I think, is on. And there's Ann Davis. Ann had an open studio, not this Christmas, but the Christmas before that, and did really well with it. So yeah, it can definitely help. And it can give you that self-confidence boost you need to go further into the next step. Ann herself, very next question, says, I had a boss tell me when I was missing work because of a sick child that if the child was terminal, it would be okay. Oh, I don't know where these people left their hearts and their empathy, Anne, but yeah, that stuck with me for a long time. I don't think the person who said that to me really had any idea about how what she was saying came across. And I don't think she meant to be as harsh about that as she was, but it's definitely impacted how I want to look and talk to people, because your family is your most important stuff. And sick children, sick families, sick friends are important. I love that I love that y'all are helping each other solve your problems and answer your questions right here in the chat roll. That's community. And I think that's a really important part of what online has done for artists, is give us a broader community to share ideas and to walk together, because we walk further, faster together. Thank you, Claire, for answering Emily's question. Leslie says, I'm retired and it would make a great difference. It would, yeah. I think it would make a huge difference. I want you to think physically, what kind of difference would it make? Make a list, and that'll help drive you to do what you need to do. Christine said, retired from office work, pursuing my dream of being an artist and selling. That's awesome. Tina says, I used to do art shows, sell paintings, and teach, and haven't for several years. You know, that's what I did when I first started selling my work. Besides selling through a gallery, was I did some art shows, and I loved doing them. It was pre-internet days, and you could make a decent amount of money at art shows, outdoor art fairs and art shows at that point. And one of the things that's a benefit from that is you get to talk to people directly, and you get a whole lot of information about what your perfect people look like. It's just a lot harder to do that now. And Stephanie says, question from Kathy Fowler, do you paint every day? Yepper. And most especially in 2020, that was one of my New Year's resolutions, was to make sure, again, that I'm painting every day. So one of the things I did to myself to make sure that happens and to keep myself accountable is I made a deal with some friends that we were going to post every day. And we're all posting in different ways. I'm doing mine on social media, and also signed up for the Strata 31-day challenge. So I'm painting from life every single day. But yeah, I do something every day towards my painting practice. It's really important that that stays at the foundation. Next question is, I wonder why somebody would purchase a painting from an online photograph sight unseen. How to make representative photographs? I'm not sure. Oh, I gotcha. Now I understand the question. So this question is around why people would buy art online, sight unseen. Part of it is that we've gotten a whole lot more comfortable with purchasing online. So how many of you have made a purchase online in the last week? I know I have. I buy from Amazon all the time. One of the ways that people feel comfortable, one of the things that makes people feel comfortable buying online is when you have a return policy that's generous. So for example, I have a 30-day no questions asked return policy. So if somebody wants to send it, if the painting's not right, they can send it back. And then people know that the risk is reversed. So most people who sell online have a policy like that, so that if there's a problem, or if the painting just is not what you thought it was going to be, it doesn't match the photo, that there's a way to reverse that risk. So yeah, people pay lots of money for art online. The online art market is huge and growing. And to see that, to get an idea of what it's like, go to ugallery.com. I'll write it out, and it'll be on the recording, or Saatchi Art online, and look at the prices there. Now, some of them are low, but you'll also see some on the high end too. And it'll give you an idea of what people are willing to spend online. And it's a whole lot more than you thought. So there's the addresses. It's ugallery.com and saatchiart.com. So that people will pay for art online, and not just $100. They'll pay into the thousands. So it's absolutely possible. Yeah, as Steve says, lots of full service gallery sites are available online. And whether you mean gallery sites for artists to use, or the big ones like Saatchi Art. Gwen says, my audience has changed. Family, friends, and community have purchased as much as they're going to. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I tell people not to rely on local, public, or live events and sales to drive their thriving artist career. Because If you're relying on your small local niche, you know, the circle that's within about 50 miles of where you are for sales, you're going to starve. When in reality, with the advent of the internet, we have a global market. Not everyone in the world is your market, your niche, but your niche can be found around the world. So I sell my paintings in the US. I have shipped paintings to Ireland, the UK, to France, and I have had students from New Zealand, Australia, everywhere in the world. Now, it's not everybody, but there are people who are in alignment with what I have to offer, both in paintings and in courses, all over the world. So you have to move beyond the local. And I don't want you to rely on the local, because you'll run your market out. So as Gwen says, you'll run out of people who have space to buy anything anymore. So yeah, Diane says, I've also sold from Facebook. And Virginia says, I sell in a gallery, not enough to make a big difference though. And I think that's true for most people who sell through galleries. Even my main gallerist, my main dealer, has said that if you want to survive purely by selling through galleries, you have to have at least 3 to 4 really good galleries to work with, not just ones that you show in, but ones who sell on a regular basis. So showing in one gallery is not going to give you enough money to live off of. You need multiple sources for sales. Awesome. Did my cat walk through? I see comments. Aw, Kitty. Yes, my cats stroll through on a regular basis in here. Steve says, I had Daily Paintworks changed to Art Wanted. Both are super easy. Yeah, and I still have Daily Paintworks. I don't use them to house my website, but you can absolutely do it there. I use them as advertising. It's only like $12.95 a month. It's one of the cheapest platforms out there and one of the nicest, as far as having a lot of tools and a lot of resources and a lot of eyeballs that look at the art. So it's definitely one to work with. I don't think it's the best one for a website though, but it is great marketing. Cheryl says, most recently I gained a commission from a company I'd worked with 30 years ago in my town. Partially, I received the commission because I'd been making it known that I actually am an artist in the community. Website, Facebook page, local exhibition, studio, and a public artist-run center. Yeah, when people realize that you're an artist, then it shifts what they think, and they go, oh, well, we need to go too, and fill in the blank. That's awesome. You are most welcome, Anne. Yeah, I think I just answered Sharon's question because it's Daily Paintworks. I love them. I think it's an addition to your website. Now you can start there and it's a good place to get started. It just doesn't look quite as spiffy as Faso does, but it's a great place to market your work because they have a large email list. Linda says, will you cover how to price your work? I will gloss over it in the big picture, Linda, but in this workshop, we don't have time to go deep into the pricing. Like I said, that is a whole module in my course. It's a whole module in the side course, the Painter's Business. So we won't have time to go into that in great depth, but I'll touch on it. So I promise you I'll touch on it. If I forget to, then be sure to bring that up again. You can always go up, Francis, but you just have a hard time. It's much harder. You want to start in that middle of the road, not as Kmart. But I agree with you. Definitely don't want to start out as Kmart. Yes, by the square inch, Karen, as far as charging. But like I said, I can't go too deep into that because we're not going to have time. Elaine says, how many paintings do you need to make a website viable? You can do it with 4. If you've got 3, go for it. We'll talk about that a little bit more on Wednesday. It's at the same time, Sandra, and again, there will be a recording. Claire, which scam is that? I'm not sure. Caroline says, yeah, I bought a painting to a local art association, and one of the volunteers said, wow, you're brave putting $200 on that without a frame. I hate it when they do that. She says, it's a darn good painting, and they were accepting art without frames. I don't think that price was too high. It's not. $200 for a painting, depending on the size, barely covers the cost of your time and your materials. Kudos to you for standing up for yourself. Yay, Kristen, be sure to pop that into the Facebook group, and we'll put your name on that list. Jean says, I sold my paintings at our UU church, had 34 paintings, sold 9 paintings, 4 were Giclée prints. Posted some on Facebook over the past 4 years. Want to develop a website. That's a great thing to do. Awesome. And that could definitely be an additional income stream in addition to your retirement. Let's see. Yeah, it's hard to let go of your work. And at times you can get really emotionally attached to it. But once it starts taking over your space and you have nowhere to put stuff, there's a lot of motivation to move it out. Right now, my studio is covered with little paintings because I've been doing those daily paintings, and I'm ready to move some of them out. So I'm launching those shortly to send them to their new homes because I need space to get more in here. Patsy from New Sellers, how to determine pricing. All pricing questions, we'll touch on it on Wednesday, but again, we won't have time to go really deeply into pricing during the workshop because that is a huge issue. I'll give you a general overview of the formula I use for that. Patsy says, identify my target market, could use a tune-up. Where do we start? Awesome. We're going to spend some time on that. And I see other equine addicts are on here. That's awesome too. Love the horse metaphors. Cool. And yeah, I'm going to make that graphic more formal. I got to get that to Carson so she can make it look pretty for y'all. I think I have caught almost, oops, no, it says 99 more questions. Yes, FASO has a shopping cart module. And Stephanie says, can you review the next workshop dates and times? Yes, Wednesday, same exact link. So I'm going to send y'all a reminder with the link again. I should have said that earlier. But Wednesday, the same time, same place, same bat cave. And we'll be going over that 5-step roadmap. So yes, absolutely. And then we'll have another session on Friday, same time, same link, same bat cave. And then on Monday, we'll be wrapping all of that up together. And my Facebook page is Mary Gilkerson Art. So if you just type Mary Gilkerson into the Facebook search bar, you will see my page and my personal profile. And yes, you should have a separate Facebook and Instagram from your personal one. In fact, Facebook requires that you not sell or conduct business on your personal profile. Instagram doesn't care, but Facebook does. So you need a Facebook business page. And if you want to run ads, you've got to have a Facebook business page. So you need a Facebook business page, even if you don't post a lot on it, and you need an Instagram business profile separate from your personal one. Stephanie says, Jennifer Blair Cockram says, will you cover time management and life balance? Do you mean in the workshop? Yeah, a little bit. I think that's part of the 5 steps, and it's part of having the mindset in the center. Because if you're spending all your time on marketing your paintings, if you're spending all of your resources on making paintings, then you have nothing left over for your personal life. You have nothing left over for your creative mindset. There's nothing feeding the system. It's all going out, nothing's coming in. So I think it's crucial that you remember that you've got to keep feeding that system, and that all comes from the center. It all comes from that mindset of the thriving artist, from the creative mindset. So yeah, in that sense, we absolutely will be. And your work is copyrighted as soon as you complete it in the US by law. It automatically is copyrighted. You don't have to file anything. It helps to file something in case you have to go to court, but it's copyrighted as soon as you make it. You don't have to do anything else. And Tina says, my website's for my shiatsu practice. I have a page on there for my energy scapes, paintings, and classes. Yeah, you do need a website just for your art because that's separate enough. It's enough of a side channel from your shiatsu practice that you want to be able to market it. I love that you actually have those two linked because I can definitely see how they feed into each other. But I would create a separate website for that. And yay, Patricia said, she says, I did surprisingly well selling locally last year, and 2020 is my year to go global. Phenomenal. And somebody's asking, what about Etsy? Etsy used to be a really great platform for selling your work when it was smaller. And then like eBay, it got taken over. You can sell thrifting items on Etsy now. So it's just such a huge marketplace that it's really hard to stand out there. And for the amount of effort that it takes to drive traffic to Etsy, because you can't count on the eyeballs coming in just because of Etsy, you've got to drive traffic there. You could drive them to your own website. And Etsy, again, is rented space. It's not a social media platform, but it's like a social media platform. And I know people who have lost their Etsy store and no way to get either the contacts of the people that came through there. It just was a hot mess. So I think Etsy can be a side channel, but I would not make it your main channel for sure. Claire says, teaching is what I can do to learn more. That's so true. And Carol says, teaching's mentoring. Absolutely it is. It goes back to that impact thing too. It's your chance to pass it on. Elaine says, we all have some art we don't feel is worthy. Is it a bad idea to post your not so good art on your website? I think it depends. Okay, so for example, in the 31-day challenge that Strata's doing, you got to post every day to stay in the game, to stay in the contest. And if you don't post that day, you're not still in. Now they let you paint on the same painting for several days in a row. So you can keep on painting. And if it doesn't work out, you just don't post the final version of it. When I did my first daily painting challenge with myself, I posted all of them, the good, bad, and the ugly. I don't have them all still up. And some of them were ugly because I was giving myself the challenge of painting in a whole different way than I'd painted before with different tools. And some of them were just a hot mess. So I think there's value in it from the accountability standpoint. But for your website, I would make sure that they're all at about the same level. So for social media, I think you're okay. But for your website, keep them all at the same level. And Cheryl says, how important is it to pursue art society memberships in relationship to marketing your work? Like the International Watercolor Society, Federation of Canadian Artists. I think it depends on what their reach is. You know, if they've got access to a large audience who could be your perfect people, then it's worth doing. If their own audience is small and whatever the membership fee is how they're mainly sourcing their revenue, then I would question it. But it can give you access to a larger audience. So there is some validity to using those. I don't think that that's an empty thing to do at all. And there are, you know, each of those is its own unique little art world. We don't have one big singular art world anymore. We've got all of these little art worlds. And that can be part of niching down. So I think there's some value in that. Yeah, FASO's fantastic. Lori's question, is there an easy website application that you can do yourself? Yes, FASO. FASO is the website. It's the company that is the hosting platform for artists. They have themes that are geared just for artists and towards selling your work. It's relatively easy to use, and they're all behind a firewall. It's real similar to Squarespace, but it's a Squarespace just for artists. So they get us, they understand us. Thank you, Carson, for finding that for me. Yes, awesome. Artist Corwin says, can I start a website with my sister? My question there, artists, would be why? I mean, is your sister making art with you? If you're both partners in the art making, then yes, that's a great thing to do. If you're just starting a website together because you're doing it together, I wouldn't do that. So I had a website with my sister, but it was not an art website. It's a different thing. It was around something we were both interested in. And that makes sense. But if you're just doing it for an activity to do together, I would say no. If you're both partners in the art making venture, then yes. If she is more technology driven than you are and understands that and wants to support you, then yes. Does that make sense? Let me know if that's not what you're asking. Claire says, and I do this too, Claire, B and C grade work goes in a box either to make better or to burn. A grade goes on the website. And the question is the A- stuff. That is awesome. Sometimes I think we are not the best judges of what is A and what is A-. I also have what I call the rework bin, and that's where the work goes that's just not up to speed. And it just pops right on in there, and I can change it later. Lanita says, I've shared my work on Facebook and LinkedIn and people have seen it, but no sales. That's where that sales mechanism comes in. You need to have a system for asking for the sale. A lot of times when there's no sale, but you're still got a lot of eyeballs, it's because people don't even know it's for sale and you're not asking for the sale. Now by that, I don't mean going up to them and beating them over the head with the buy my stuff thing. I mean that you're not making an offer so that people understand that it's an offer. And I know I did that for a long time on my own website. I was hesitant to say it was for sale or to put a buy button on there because I felt like I was going to be schmoozy if I did that. So there are ways to do that on social media that are not sleazy. I don't think it works to say buy my paintings on social media. And I have qualms about the idea of the shopping cart directly in Facebook and Instagram. I know it works for a lot of people. I think it works when it's directly in Instagram and Facebook because then the platforms encourage it. They don't encourage people to leave the platform to purchase. So I think you have to walk really carefully there. But yeah, you just need to bring them to your website. I don't think the sales really happen directly for a lot of people on social media. You haven't built up that relationship enough for people to have the know, like, and trust factor there. Yes, and Denise is selling greeting cards. I remember that in a local bakery. You're not going to make a living that way, but it's great advertisement for your work. Elaine says, is it wrong to post or sell paintings that were created in workshops and therefore copied from the instructor's work? That depends on what the instructor told you at the workshop. There are some instructors that specifically ask that you not sell paintings that were created in the workshop when you are working under the instructor's directions. And a lot of exhibitions and shows explicitly forbid you to enter work that was done in a workshop because it's not entirely your own creation. You've been told what to do step by step. I think it entirely depends on what the person teaching the workshop told you. If they told you they don't care, I think it's okay. I think the problem with doing that, and here's why I would not do that, doesn't have anything to do with what the instructor said, is that there's a hamster wheel that a lot of people get on of going to lots of different workshops. And each time you go to a workshop, your work's going to change just a little bit. And a lot of times, depending on who's teaching it, you're going to be pushed to paint in that person's style. And if your style is always changing and what you're presenting to the public is always changing in style, depending on which workshop you just went to, that's not a way to build a brand. It's not a way to make something recognizable to people. So that's why I wouldn't do it. I would instead use what you learned from the workshop that you want to hold on to build your own brand and style. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, Elaine, but it's how I would handle that. Carol says, I'm interested in donating to charity from sales. I wonder what the best way to do that is. Contact the charity and talk to them, let them know that you would like to donate X amount % of whatever your sales are from a certain series to that charity. Then you can, in all good faith, put it on your website or in your social media that say 10% of all sales will go to myfavoritecharity.com. And you've partnered with them. I think that's a great thing to do. It's one way to build a partnership that's beneficial for everybody, and it's a way to give back. Kim, thank you. I'm so glad that people are feeling inspired. Awesome. Kate says, yeah, get fixated on the market. Would love to teach, but don't have a degree in art. You don't have to have a degree in art to teach. Some of the best teachers out there that I know don't have degrees in art. What you have to have is more information than the people you're teaching. So if you're 2 steps ahead of the people that you're teaching, you're going to be able to share with them what you already know. You don't have to be the perfect artist already. You just need to be ahead of where they are. And you'll have something to share with them. So look around for people who are asking you questions about what you're doing. Those are the people who are going to be interested in learning from you. But you definitely do not have to have a degree. Claire, yes. Workshop art. Yeah, I think if you're honest, selling it's okay. You just have to make sure it's okay with the person who taught it. Then it's a way to fund the rest of your your learning. But you just have to be careful that you don't have that revolving cycle of different styles going on. Let's see if I get down. Oh, these are comments to other people's questions. Yeah, people get motivated to buy art online, just like, I mean, how many of y'all have ordered from Amazon? Like I said, we all order online. It's easy. It comes to your door. And if it doesn't work, you can send it back. So, question from Elizabeth Hayden on Facebook. That is, do I need to have professional photos taken? Depends on how good a photographer you are and how good your camera is. So if you've got a decent iPhone, your camera is good enough to take photos of your artwork, but you want to take it under diffused light. So you need to have good, strong photos that crop out all the other extraneous background stuff. If you feel uncomfortable taking the photos, then by all means get somebody else to take them for you who knows what they're doing. But you can learn to do them yourself and save a good deal of money. That's one place that a lot of people can save money. But what you don't want to do is take a photo on your picnic table and then pop that up onto the website. You want to have a photo that's pretty high quality and doesn't have a lot of other stuff in there. So Patricia says, I sold 4 pieces in 2019 to people who saw my casual posts on Instagram and Facebook's high five. This gives me confidence to think I can have success when I make a real effort. You're right. If you're already selling through casual posts, that's the market telling you they're ready and waiting for you. And Tina says, my dream is to create and sell products created from my paintings. Yes, do that. I know people who do that. So absolutely. Do you have any ideas and suggestions for how to do this? Just like marketing any other art form, absolutely go for it. There are sites like Printful and Zazzle that will create the pieces for you from your digital files that don't require a whole lot of investment from you. I don't know if Kim Bolin is on right now, but one of my students, Kim from Louisiana, has just gone through the process of having really high quality silk and wool and cashmere scarves made from her paintings, and they are exquisitely gorgeous. And so those are high-end pieces that she's going to be selling for a lot. She's hoping to get into some major retailers, not just sell them online, but to really market them through some good retail outlets. And I think that's definitely a possibility. So she's done all the research already on those high quality outlets for scarves and things like that. So we have a list. Yeah, you can absolutely do that. So make the great art first and then take good high res photos of them, and you can absolutely create those products that are fantastic. How do I get known online in the galleries? Nancy asks. That's what we're going to cover, or at least the process, on Wednesday. But roughly, if you follow through on those 5 steps and build that audience of perfect people, you'll become known online. Now, how do you become known in the galleries? Do you mean how to get in a gallery through being online? The way that you get in a gallery through being online. First, most galleries now, one of the first questions they ask when people come in to show their work is, do you have a website? That was a roadblock for one of my students who was talking to a dealer because she hadn't had time to create a website yet. So she used her Instagram account so that she could share her work with the dealer. And that worked out. She still needed a website long term. The way that you get known by the galleries is that any of those channels is that by showing up in public spaces, those places are out scouting. So I used to be the public art director for the city of Columbia. I ran the public art program for the city. And one of the things that we did was that we would go to some of the major regional events to scout artists. I would cruise through online looking for artists that could do the public art projects that we had coming up because there weren't enough people in our database. So people are out there looking, and if you're online, they're more likely to find you. They can't find you if you're not searchable. So that's one way they find you. And that is a way that you then get enough presence. And if you're selling, then a gallery is more interested in you. Galleries want people who are producing a consistent body of work over time. And if you can show that your work is selling, then they're way more interested in you. That's what I mean by building your artistic resume. Stephanie says, question from Kathy Spadaro. Oh, and we have about 5 more minutes and we still have over 100 messages there. I'm going to try to get back into the Facebook group and answer some of these questions because we've got a lot of questions still and we are out of time, actually over time already. Kathy says, do you charge your buyers the shipping cost or build it into the price? There are 2 ways of dealing with that. I like to separate it out so that I can give a discount on shipping if I want to. So I charge for shipping, but then I can discount it if I need to. But I know lots of people who build it into the price. So it can go either way. It just depends on how you want to deal with it. And any suggestions for portrait painting business? It's the same. Growing a portrait painting business is the same as growing a landscape painting business or any other painting business. People look for an artist who has a reputation, who has the skills, who has the ability to finish a commission. So all of the same things that we're talking about in those 5 key steps apply whether you are going to paint portraits or paint landscapes or paint pets or anything else. I have a former student who I taught her ages ago, long before the internet. So her excellent internet skills, I am not responsible for. She developed those on her own at the same time I was developing mine. She has a business painting portraits of pets, and they are not your standard pet portraits. They are large paintings, I mean big, and they are in a very modern style. They're fantastic paintings, whether they're of pets or not. And she has used social media to build her business. So she has a website, she's active on social media, and that active social media presence drives people back to her website where they sign up for a commission. So yes, it absolutely works. Question from Mary Coster. Just checking in and was wondering about art storefront to start a website. Yeah, it can work. It's a newer game in town. They started about 2 years ago. I watched them as they were developing. And they, like FASO, are geared just for visual artists. It's kind of a combination of Shopify meets FASO without being as large as Shopify or having the track record of FASO. So art storefront could definitely be one option. I tend to have a preference for FASO just because they've been around longer. And I feel like they have proved their staying power, but I don't think that means that art storefront is going to go away anytime soon. So I think they're going to be able to stick around. I've seen some other things kind of appear and disappear, but I think art storefront is a good viable option for sure. Could I post the wheel again? Yeah, I'll make a copy of it and send it out for y'all, Denise, and then we'll have a more detailed PDF next time. And Caroline says, oh, thank you, Caroline. Yeah, he was almost 30, so it was not unexpected. I am glad this was helpful. And Michael, yes, there's a recording, so you'll get a recording. The Daily Painting Challenge site, that was Strata Easel. It's not one that I'm running. I'm just participating in it. And how many pieces of art for a viable website? 4 to 5 is enough to get started. And some say FAA does not pay well. No, I would not use them, Nancy. FAA is Fine Art America. And I am not going to say too much more about them because this is a public forum. But just know I don't do anything with them. I think my stuff is still on there, but I don't do anything with them. Awesome. You are welcome, Tom. And Lisa, we're going to talk about the dialogue with your people on Wednesday. So last question here from Francis, and then we're going to have to hop off because we are way over, and I will catch all of these last questions once I have a chance to pop back into Facebook. Francis said, I had a teacher in Switzerland and learned porcelain painting who told me you will return to the US and teach. I didn't believe her till I realized that what you just said is all it takes, knowing more than your students. Fantastic. There you go. And yes, there's always somebody who's 2 to 10 steps behind you who needs a hand lifting them to the next step, who's not as intimidating. So go for it. And I'm so glad it's been helpful, Beth. And if I have not answered your question, I promise I will do that over in the Artwork Living Facebook group. But we are out of time. So know that I will get to your question. Oh, wait a minute. I think we only have a handful left. So I'm going to go in and grab as many of these as I can. Elaine, one style. Style happens by painting a lot. And your style will develop naturally, just like your handwriting. Don't think about style, just paint. And Carol, I'm glad that this worked for you. And entering art competitions, no, I don't think it's worth it. I don't think that's necessarily time well spent unless it's part of an art society that gives you access to a larger audience. I could wax poetic about that for an hour. So yeah, I'll touch on that next time, or I'll talk about that a little bit more in the group. Fantastic. Awesome. Thank you all for being here. And if anything else comes up, be sure to hop over into the Artwork Living free Facebook group, and I will answer questions there later. Happy painting, everybody. See you again on Wednesday. Bye-bye for now.